Hey, everyone. Welcome. Welcome so much. Thank you so much for being here for the webinar. About 3 minutes early just to be on to make sure that people have time to jump on. I've got my notes up. I'm excited to be here. This is my first webinar, like live stream that I'm doing on YouTube. So this is a new experience for me. I've been doing leadership videos on YouTube for 2 years now, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in June or July, I think. So I haven't gone live yet. So I'm excited to go live today to talk about the law of priorities, and it's going to be a wonderful leadership webinar opportunity for me to give you as much value as possible. So I'll give it about a couple more minutes until 4:00 on the dot. But yeah, if you're watching the replay, just know that this will be saved to my YouTube channel so you can rewatch. So if you're watching this like in the future, sometime way after Tuesday, March 29th at 4 p.m., that's okay. Check out the link in the description below. I'll have more details about how you can learn more about the law, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and the law of priorities, and everything else I'm about to share here today, in case this is like you're watching in the future. So don't worry, this is still going to be value added if you're watching in the future, and there's still ways to connect with me if you're watching the replay in the future. So I'm going to give it one more minute until 4:00, and then I'll just get started. And I'll do a little bit of an overview of what to expect for today for our webinar. And I will be doing, I'll show you what value I'm going to add, and I'll do a little bit of an introduction for myself. So hello, if you're joining, locate the chat. Go ahead and type where you're from so I can say hello to you and say thank you for joining. So it's 4:00 on the dot. I'm going to get started. So thank you so much for joining me on this free webinar on the law of priorities. My name is Kayla. I'm a leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. Hi, Emily in Bloomington, Indiana. Yay. I'm excited. Excited to host my first webinar on YouTube Live. Never done this before. It's not very hard. It's actually pretty easy. You just have to have your mic and your webcam hooked up. So I'm excited to be doing this here, the first time here instead of on like Instagram or somewhere else. So today I'm going to be talking about the law of priorities. I'll be talking about John Maxwell's book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Yay, I'm excited that you're here too. So I have the book and I have the workbook here. I'm going to be going over my favorite law today. And I am going to try to give you as much value as I possibly can in the short time that we're together so that, keeping it well under an hour. So there's time for Q&A at the end. Feel free to put your questions in the chat and I will answer them as we go or at the end, depending on how we're doing for time. So again, I'm Kayla. I'm a leadership coach, speaker, and trainer. I have my own business. It's called KFA Consulting, where I do leadership coaching, which means I can do one-on-one coaching where I meet with you and we talk about your goals as a leader. And a coach really helps accelerate your growth and gets you from where you are to where you want to be faster than you could do that on your own. So I work with you by asking you questions, trying to get at where you want to go. And we come up with a roadmap and you do the work and I guide you and keep you on track and accountable. So it's really fun. A lot of times leadership, when you're trying to move forward, it's all a lot of it is mindset. And so I help you do that as well as gather tactical strategy for moving forward. I also love to do speaking and love speaking at events and doing trainings like this. So I will put my website in the chat box for you so you can check it out. It's kfaconsulting.org. And you can read more about me on my page there. And I've been in healthcare for 10 years coming up this October. So I have lots of healthcare leadership experience, other volunteerism experience you can read about on my website. And I'm a mom of 2 kiddos under 4 years old. It's pretty nuts in my house right now. And I'm the oldest sibling of 3 of us, and I'm an Enneagram 3, which is the achiever. So you can probably tell what kind of person I am just from that. So let's dive into the law of priorities. It's one of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership that's written in the book by John Maxwell. My favorite law is the law of priorities. So I'm going to dive deep into this one law today. I can't go over all 21 laws during this time that we have because it would just take too long, right? And I would want to spend time deep diving into each one. So if you enjoy how we talk through all of this today, at the end of the presentation and the webinar, I'll share like how we can continue working together and going through the laws because I think they're super valuable and I really love this book. So the law of priorities is actually the 17th law in this book. Just going to open the page here. So what I find really interesting is in the early 1900s, the word priority was actually singular. And then somewhere mid-century, all of a sudden it became multiple. So it used to be one priority, right? A single priority. What's my most important thing to do? And then all of a sudden it became multiples. I have multiple priorities, meaning I have multiple things that are very important to do. Everything is important, right? All of a sudden everything's important. No wonder we're burnt out and wondering like, how do we get all of our stuff done? It's super hard when we have all these things that are competing. So it's very important for us to figure out how do we prioritize our work, the things in our life, and then what really nice ways can we do that as leaders? And one of the ways we can do that as leaders is through delegation. So in today's talk, I'm going to go over how to prioritize, review the law of priorities, but then I'm going to go over how to be the type of leader that delegates and share with you, number one, a mindset you can set around delegation that helps you view it in a positive connotation. I'm going to share with you how to figure out who to delegate to, what kind of person would be the right person to delegate to, what you can delegate and share so that you can make space and time for you to do the other things that matter, the things that are working well for you, the things that are the right work for you to only be doing. And then I'm going to share what and the how of delegating. What will grow others so that you don't have to, so that you're not doing those tasks. What things grow other people. And I'm going to share with you my method, and it's called the TEST method, and it's a mnemonic to remember how to delegate. So if you're just joining, thank you for being here. Put your location in the chat so I can see where you're coming from and so I can say hi and thank you for joining. And I will share with you the goal of delegation, and which is to get everyone to play out to their fullest potential. So let's get started. So I'm looking at the book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, number 17, the Law of Priorities. I want to read this to you because I think it's so good. First, when we are busy, we naturally believe we are achieving. But busyness doesn't equal productivity. Activity is not necessarily accomplishment. I'll read that again. Activity is not necessarily accomplishment, right? Being busy doesn't mean productive. I think we all know this, but when you reframe it and think about activity and then accomplishment, it really makes me think of things that drive results. How do we find success? And just doing activities doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find success or drive results. So activity is not necessarily accomplishment. Prioritizing requires leaders to continually think ahead, to know what's important, to know what's next, to see how everything relates to the overall vision. That's hard work. Being a leader often means being a proactive leader. When you have so much on your to-do list, it's so easy to get behind and to feel like very overwhelmed, and I have so many things and I'm in the hole and I can't possibly ask for help because this is so embarrassing. So I think getting ahead of things by delegating, which I'm going to share with you how I do it, my specific test method, I'm calling it for delegation, that can really help you get out in front and be more proactive and be able to anticipate what's going on and how to read the room when it comes to where your organization's going in terms of strategic priorities, or what's the next big project, or what's the next cool thing that I could do to grow myself and to grow my other people. Third, prioritizing causes us to do things that are at the least uncomfortable and sometimes downright painful. When we prioritize, we have to make hard decisions, which means when you have all these competing multiple priorities, at some point you have to say to yourself, no, actually, this is the most important thing. So I think that's really interesting. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. The other thing I want to share with you from the book and the Law of Priorities is this quote. It says, leadership has nothing to do with comfort and everything to do with progress. It can be uncomfortable to have to move through your priorities, to keep going, to sift through your to-do list every day, to figure out, I'm so overwhelmed. What am I supposed to be doing? What is the next right thing to be doing? Leaders can't afford to just think inside the box. Sometimes they need to reinvent the box or blow it up. One of my favorite things I learned in the Law of Priorities here is that the leader's first responsibility is to define reality. You get to decide what you work on every single day. You get to decide, talking to your boss, hey, this is where I like to work. These are my priorities. This is how I want to grow. Take control of that. So many of us go through an entire year and look back and think like, did I actually do anything I wanted to do? Did I do anything that was going to drive progress forward intentionally? Or did I just sort of flow through the motions? Right now, I know is probably towards the end of performance review season for many people. So I'd encourage you to reflect on, how did your review go this year? Were you excited to look back on the previous year, or were you sort of like, I'd rather not relive it? I know for me at some points I'm like, yeah, it was traumatic. I'd rather just look forward. So we want to be cultivating years of our lives where we're excited to do the work and to do the right things and do things that get us excited. When you're a leader, everything is on the table and it's your job to sift through it and prioritize. So now I want to talk about what the book talks about are the 3 R's, or the 3 things that can help you figure out, okay, what are the things I prioritize and how do I prioritize or sift through my list of things? How do I know what's most important? And the 3 things are, number 1, you got to know or figure out what's required. Number 2 is what gives the greatest return. And number 3 is what brings the greatest reward. So going back to number 1, what's required? What's required is you can figure out what's required by asking yourself the question, what must I do that nobody can or should do for me? So I want to talk about the idea of servant leadership versus just like selfish leadership, which is an interesting concept. So some people argue that there's only one kind of leadership, servant leadership, right? Because if you go into leadership for the right reasons, you're there to help people, to make things better. And honestly, the leader should be doing, be willing to do the hardest thing that they're asking their direct reports or other folks to do, right? Sometimes that means sacrifice or doing the hard things. And helping others grow, getting excited, driving results that are going to make people's lives better, right? Selfish leadership is doing it for external things like the title, the money. Wouldn't it be cool if I was CEO and I was making a lot of money? Yeah, that would be really cool, right? But when push comes to shove, when it's hard times, when your to-do list is really long, I bet you can relate. Put a comment in the chat if you can relate. It's really hard to be motivated if your why or your purpose is seated in something external, like a good job from your boss, or even a small raise that doesn't really meet, the cost of living standards, right? That's not super high. Your purpose is going to be deeply embedded and rooted in helping others and helping others develop. So when I think about what's required, what must I do that nobody can or should do for me? I'm not talking about delegating or deprioritizing things that you don't like to do, right? Sometimes as leaders, we have to do the hard things. I'm talking about the things that are unique to you and your leadership skill set and unique to you in your job description. So in my podcast the other day, if you don't listen, I have a podcast called Glow Getters Podcast. It's linked to my website. You can, you know, uh, sorry, I lost my train of thought because I saw Emily's chat. Yeah, I get a 500-point bonus, a $5 gift card for a job well done. It doesn't make me motivated at all. Yeah, because that's not your purpose for being a leader. It's great. It's awesome. But when you're having a bad day, the gift card isn't going to keep you motivated. So when you think about your purpose, it's got to be rooted in something bigger, something more servant based. So when you think about what's only required, I think about my specific skill set. So if I'm a manager and my job is to cultivate relationships with a service line or some important folks in another department or my frontline staff, I'm the only one that can do that. I'm not going to delegate crucial conversations or meeting people I've never met before to someone else because I don't want to, or because I just rather have them do it so I can be free to do something else. So that would be a good example of something only I can do. I think what I was saying was on my Glow Getters podcast episode, I talked about the example of maybe creating a workflow diagram. I'm really good at those. I love using Visio. I love using Drawio. If you ever use that app on Google, it's so much fun. Connect the dots, make everything super clear and high level. I love it. Do I personally need to do that? Is that a strength of mine? Sure, that's a strength of mine, but it's something that someone else can do that will find value in doing that thing to help them grow and develop themselves. Will making another flow diagram help me develop myself? Probably not. But might it be good to delegate that to somebody who's just at the beginning of their career, hasn't made one before, and will need to make them in the future? Absolutely. So when you're thinking about things to prioritize or deprioritize, look at your list. What's required and something that nobody can do or should do for me? And those are the things keep. Other things where other people could do and can do for you, those are the things you might consider delegating. The second thing is what gives you the greatest return. So as a leader, you should spend most of your time working in your strengths. So that podcast episode was called something about, getting out of your comfort zone, but working in your zone of genius. What gives what are your greatest strengths? If you were to write those down and think about that, it would be like the things that probably give you energy, right? They excite you. You are more productive when you are working in your strengths because you want to do that. You get, positive feedback immediately from doing something that you're good at, and it feels amazing. You get that instant rush of dopamine. So try to prioritize things that are going to give the greatest return because they're in your zone of strength. You're going to do a good job. You're going to be able to drive the most results. You're going to be more and more productive in your zone of genius. And then, think about delegating things that somebody else maybe has a strength in that area where it's not your primary strength. A good rule of thumb when you're thinking about delegating things that might not give you a great return because it's not your major strength, but it's something you can do, is the 80-20 rule or the Pareto method. So you think about if somebody can do something 80% of the as well as you could do it, or can meet the standard or almost meet your standard for what you would consider a job well done, that's something you can and should delegate if possible. If they can't meet that standard, you want to find somebody else who has that strength to delegate to. And that's part of my method that I'm going to teach you in a little bit here. But oftentimes, I think we fail to delegate or to teach and train folks because we're like, they can't do it as good as I can do it. Or it's just faster for me to take care of that thing. But it's an investment that you've got to make in folks so that you can get an even greater return. They'll keep coming back to you and say, hey, I want more stuff to do. And I'm going to share how to get this to happen to you when I talk about my method in a few minutes here. But delegate and teach and train to delegate things that people can do almost as well as you, and it's going to be good enough. It's going to be very good, in fact, and it's an investment in your folks. So we've talked about what's required, what must I do that nobody can do or should do for me. Then the second thing we talked about is what gives the greatest return, or, spending time working in your zone of genius, in your strengths, because that's going to make you the most productive. And the third thing is what brings the greatest reward. So there are many, many things, many shiny objects in in your leadership journey, things you can do that you want to do, but what gives you the greatest reward? What do you absolutely love doing? For me, that's people stuff. So if I'm going to prioritize tasks over other things, I'm probably going to prioritize people stuff. But I'm also a manager, which makes me all about the people. So you have to think about it in terms of your job. Maybe, Emily, you're a scientist, but you also work on projects for different companies. For you, it might be like, I love coming up with the best plan for an experiment and trying it out and seeing if it works. I can't wait to make the next proposal. I'm really excited. I love doing that. That's going to light you up. The more that you prioritize tasks that light you up and get you excited, the more you're going to figure out, okay, I need to build in time to do things I love that only I can do, and I'm going to work in my strengths consistently. That's going to get you so that you're not resentful of your work. You're not resentful of your super long to-do lists. And then it's going to leave you free to help grow and develop others when we're talking about that servant mindset, that mindset that where our leadership, we've gone into leadership for the right reasons, to help others, to build up our teams, to find results, and not just to find that external validation, that gift card, that title, that fancy title. It doesn't mean anything on a hard day. So, it might be hard for you to remember the 3 R's, but required, greatest return, and reward. A more simple way that I like to put it is, what's going to help make things easier for me? What's going to make me feel good? And you can even insert what's going to help my people the most and what's going to make us feel the greatest. Those are the things you want to do and to prioritize. So if we talk about the last concept I want to have in this kind of section of the talk is focus. When we prioritize the things that we love, that we're good at, that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, the greatest return, drive the greatest results, that leads to extreme focus. And we talk a lot about multitasking, and I just want to demystify it and say, like, multitasking doesn't work for humans. It's so hard to multitask. And really what it is it's context switching. You're focusing on this thing, and then this thing, and this thing, and then this thing. So you're not really doing 2 things at once. You're just getting distracted a ton. When you have clear priorities and a clear, most important thing for your day, you can focus more. You're not worrying about the other things on your list. Focus leads to more productivity. So if I were to draw a graph, I would draw exponential growth in your productivity. When you find focus, you grow more and you're way more productive because you're not worrying and checking back in your list, refreshing your email, all of these other things. Now I want to talk about delegation. So I want to jump into the second half of the talk, the webinar. So now we've thought about, okay, what do we want to prioritize, spend our time on, focus on, and it all sounds lovely, like, yay, I'll just do only the things I like to do. Not 100% true. We still have to do the hard things, only the things we can do that are in our skill set, right? We can't delegate everything. But if we can find more joy in our work, do things that we know are moving the needle forward, we're going to be happier. And we still have to find ways to get the other things done, but that might be through delegation. So again, the mindset around delegation is through this servant leadership lens, this lens of growth. And if you're not convinced, let me share this with you. Let's just say you're a very successful individual. You've climbed the ranks, you're great at your job, you're awesome at doing what you do. You leave the organization. What happens to your legacy if you have not grown and developed other people and passed on your knowledge and multiplied your leadership? All of what you've done is now undone when you leave. Sure, maybe some of the things you've implemented will be sustainable, but your personality, your individual strengths, the things that you personally did for the organization, they're gone once you leave. So the opposite of that is multiplying growth in other people, multiplying your leadership, duplicating what you know, sharing with other people what you know, teaching people, right? Being a trainer, being a good leader, passing that on. That's servant leadership. The opposite is what I like to call selfish leadership, just being a successful person in my own being, even though I'm a leader, right? But servant leadership is multiplying and being replaceable at some point, right? So if I were to leave my organization today, but I've helped other people develop and do a great job at their work and feel confident and know what to do, know how to do things I knew how to do and be amazing in prioritization, let's say for example, then my legacy is that I've created other leaders who can multiply their leadership, and they're going to delegate and they're going to grow other people's leadership. So the idea around delegation is that it's a servant leadership mindset. It's a growth. It's multiplying. So some people have this connotation that it's nasty, that it's like having other people do things for me that I could do for myself or that I don't want to do. We've already proved that's not what delegation is. But to even drill down the point further, I want to make sure that you have this mindset that no, it's actually multiplying your leadership. That's true servant leadership right there. All right. So this is where I'm going to get into the good stuff. I'm going to share with you my method for how I figure out who and how to delegate things. So first of all, when you think about who, I always keep my ears and eyes open for people who tell me things like, I want more to do. I'm bored. I'm interested in growth. I want to develop myself. Or ask, hey, what leadership opportunities are available? I also make sure that I'm asking. So if you're a leader and you have direct reports or other people that you work with, maybe that they don't report directly to you, but maybe they are coworkers of yours, colleagues, people who are coming up through the ranks who might be a little bit behind you. I always try to ask as well, like, hey, are you ever looking for more growth opportunities? Or, hey, would you ever be interested in learning something that I do? Or would you ever want to shadow me for a day? And one specific question I love to ask, especially in one-on-one meetings with people, is, are you a people, process, or data person? And that kind of gives me a feel of what tasks people would like to learn and have delegated to them. And what I like to do is keep a list. So that's people, process, or data people. I like to keep a list of people who have said, oh, I'm a data person. I love crunching numbers. I love making spreadsheets. I love making graphs for presentations. Oh, I'm a process person. I love process improvement initiatives. I love looking at workflow. I like making things better and easier for the team. Or people. I like meeting with folks. I like hearing them, how they tick. I like having conversations. I like persuading people. I like negotiation. I like, just having conversations. I like building relationships. Keep a list. I have a little Excel document where I keep a list of, Kayla said today that she loves data. And then that's a reminder for myself. Next time I have a long list of to-dos, and something on here is data, and I look at it and I say, is that something that only I can do, or is it something someone else can do? I think of her. I think of that person that said, hey, they like data. I wonder if they'd be open and have time for this right now. And could I schedule some time to teach and train them to do this thing? And keep in mind, if they can do it 80% as well as you can, or you can teach and train them to meet the standard, you should. It's an investment in them. It's multiplying your leadership. It's leaving your legacy. Now, the test method is my method for kind of using a standard criteria to determine who I should delegate to and sort of what I should delegate to them. So T in the word test, T-E-S-T. T is for teachable. So is the person willing to learn? If they're a learner and they have a can-do attitude and they like to learn new things, these are the best people to delegate to because they're always looking to learn new skills and to hone in new skills. So if they're teachable. E is for eager. So there are some people who like to learn, but they're like, I don't really want to do this. That's where it comes in, where you try to figure out, okay, what kind of person are they? Do they like people? Do they like processes? Do they like data? Are they in a good place right now where they're like, I have time? Yeah, let me run with it. The people that say, oh, I can just figure it out, those are the people that are most easy to delegate to, and that are going to be, you're going to be excited to be like, let me show you this thing. And when they learn something, you get rewarded too because it feels good. The S in test is skilled or strength. Again, this is where you want to delegate to people in their strengths. The worst thing you can do is delegate to people in their weaknesses, because it's just going to point out that they have a lot more work to do, and it's going to require a lot more coaching and training from you. And the whole point is to make this as easy as possible. So you want to identify, Lindsay is a data person. I'm going to see if she'll do this data thing for me because that's her strength. And then later on, I might say, hey, you did really good in that presentation when you shared that data and you had those really nice conversations with our executives. Would you be willing to sit in on the next meeting? See if they can handle a people thing. This is sort of how you expand to develop people to have different types of skills. You bring them in on their strength, and then you expose them to new areas where they can grow. And the fourth letter in test, T-E-S-T, the T is for try. Are they willing to try? It's never fun when you try to delegate to someone who doesn't really want to delegate. And that's what happens when you try to pass something on that you don't really want to do, that you don't want to take time to teach. They don't want to be taught. They're not eager and they're not skilled. So the test method, are they teachable? Are they eager? Are they skilled or have a strength in that area? And try? Are they willing to try, make mistakes, and try again? Watch out for people who want it to be perfect on the first shot. You have to make it very clear that this is just a rough draft, that this is a first shot, that this is, you don't care how they do it. You're going to teach them your way, and you're going to let them go and see what they come back with and give them some feedback. So the goal of delegating, if you think of a sports team, is to get everyone to play to their potential, right? So yay, I'm glad you love the method. You want to get everyone to play to their potential. So you want to be seeking out people who are looking for these types of things, but also asking the questions. Because sometimes I find that people see, oh, there's only one leadership position between me and the boss. There's no room for me to grow. And so they might not know to ask, but you can be very forthcoming. Hey, I've got some really awesome projects. Don't frame them as like, I got some things that my list is too long and I need to get rid of. But hey, I have some really awesome things I want to share with you. I know you're really good and skilled at data. I want you to play to your fullest potential. Would you be willing to learn? And could I delegate something to you? Yes, me, I wanna be perfect on the first shot. I know, Emily. I know, me too sometimes. Sometimes I get caught up in, like, formatting a document to make it look pretty, and then I'm like, "No, no, no." Just, like, spill all the beans on the paper, then go back and format later, so I totally get this. Miss Paula, great method. Okay, I'm glad that you like it. I feel like it's really simple. Test, teachable, eager, skilled/strengths, and willing to try. But at the same time, I see people really, like, hesitating when it comes to delegating because they almost see it as like a burden that they're putting on other people. But to me, it's like, no, people want these opportunities. If they don't want the opportunities, they're going to be very clear. And those are not the people that you want to delegate to. You want to find other people to delegate to. Okay, so let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. Just to summarize what we've gone over today, and then I can share with you how you can learn more about the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So today we talked about diving into the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and we went over the law of priorities, law number 17. And I talked about the history of priorities, how the word used to be singular, one priority, and now it's multiple. And so we are faced in this world with competing priorities. No wonder we're feeling overwhelmed. So we got to think about, what should we be doing? What's the right work for us to be doing as leaders? So we think of the 3 R's. What's required? What gives the greatest return? And what brings the greatest reward? To put it simply, what do I have to do that is something only I can do that others should not do for me? Meaning it's in my skill set, it's in my job description, and it's something that I maybe have this special sparkle for, to put it simply. What can make my life easier, fill my cup, make me happy, make the lives of my people happy? Simple as that. Then, to free you up to prioritize the rest of your list, you want to delegate. And the mindset around delegating is servant leadership, growth, multiplication, sustainability, leaving your legacy, versus selfish leadership, where you're just successful in yourself and then you leave and that legacy is lost. You want to work on being replaceable, right? You want to be able to move into these new roles and leave your legacy behind, not have to stay in the same position because you're the only one that can do that thing. To be able to delegate and to find the right people to delegate to, you want to keep your ears and your eyes always open. You want to be thinking about, oh, who's a people person? Who's a process person? Who's a data person? Keep a list and think about the 80-20 rule. If the person can do it 80% as good as you or meet the standard, train, give guidance, teach, and help them learn what you do, and then set them free and let them give it a shot. And use my method, the test method. Teachable, eager, skilled, or strength, and willing to try. And the goal overall is to get everyone to play to their potential. If you think of a sports team, we have to play as a team. But that only happens if everyone can play to their full potential. And that's when it's the most fun. So at the beginning, I learned, I promised to offer a way to keep learning from me if this is interesting to you. So let me put a link to the chat. I am going to be doing an 8-week mastermind on this whole book, and it's going to be starting on April 12th. I'm going to be doing it around the same time as today, starting April 12th. It's going to be 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Central. It will be recorded like this, and all of the lessons will be recorded and put in my Leadership Collaborative community. So if you're interested in learning and going through all 21 laws with me, I'm doing this 8-week mastermind starting April 12th, and it goes through the end of May, 1 hour a week. I will send you a copy of the book, and I also have the workbook, and I have digital copies of participant guides that walk you through each of the 21 laws. So you would get the book plus these participant guides to help walk through the lesson. And what I would do is I would teach on the lesson similar to what I've been doing today, probably leave more room for discussion and collaboration. And we're going to be learning in real time. How can I bring these skills to my job the next day? What can I implement and take away? What's tangible? How am I doing? And the really cool thing about the learner guides is that you can actually rank yourself about how you're doing for each of the 21 laws and then give yourself a score. I know it's really scary, but it's super fun and we can dive in, and it's a great opportunity to be better. And so I picked today the law of priorities because that's my favorite one, but I'll just share with you the other laws. And they're also listed in the link that I put there in the chat. So it's the law of the lid, the law of influence, the law of process, the law of navigation, the law of addition, the law of solid ground, the law of respect, the law of intuition, the law of magnetism, the law of connection, the law of the inner circle, the law of empowerment, the law of the picture, the law of buy-in, the law of victory, the law of the big mo or momentum, the law of priorities, the law of sacrifice, the law of timing, the law of explosive growth, and the law of legacy. So I love all these laws. They're super interesting. They're a great way to elevate your leadership and kind of do a check-in. And then you can also take this material and share it with the people that you lead, or share it at work with your boss, or, hey, you learn about the law of the lid. Hey, I think our lid is a little bit low. Let's elevate that. If you read the book, you'll know what I mean. So the cool thing about the mastermind is it's guided by me. So you'll have the book you can read. The chapters are really short. The law of priorities is only a few pages long. And I will pull out the high concepts for us for discussion, as well as we'll do that with the learner guides. And then that will allow us to cover about 3 laws every week. And that's how we're going to get through it in 8 weeks. And the last week, we'll be sure to summarize. Make sure you have a roadmap for moving forward, for implementing these things. as you move forward in your leadership. And it's a good way to connect with others, hence mastermind. So the link in the chat has all the details for what is a mastermind, which is going through the book, like-minded people who want to elevate themselves, and the value you get there. So again, it's the book, me teaching you every week on 3 of the laws until we get through all 21 laws, learner guides, and you get access to my leadership collaborative community. I also have a leadership course in there, as well as material that you can grab that's already in there. So you have full access to it, and then you'll just be able to be in there to network with leaders. So now that you know that, I want to open it up for any questions or comment. Feel free to put those in the chat and I'll answer those. And any feedback that you have about, did you like the webinar? What do you think of the law of priorities? Have you ever heard of the law of priorities? What struggles do you have with delegation? Anything that I can help you with when it comes to leadership or delegation or feedback that I can give you, I would love to give you that. So I'll stay on here for a few more minutes to answer your questions. Miss Paula, nice information for brainstorming. Short reading is cool too. Yes, good way to connect with others. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think like doing it in little pieces and nuggets is so much easier than saying, let's read this whole book together. So I have already gone through the book and highlighted, this is the law of the lid, highlighted the pieces that stand out for me. I've studied some of the laws. Awesome. That's so cool. I really like the laws. Some of them are more obvious than others. I think some of them are, there's very thought-provoking. The book actually has really good stories. For example, the law of the lid has a story about Dick and Maurice McDonald, who founded McDonald's, and then Ray Kroc, who came along and bought it out and actually turned it into this huge franchise, and about Ray Kroc's leadership success versus Dick and Maurice McDonald. So there's some really cool real life stories. And then I hope in the mastermind, what we can do too is I can share some personal stories from my leadership experience, and others can share theirs as well. And that's some of the learner guides have questions and prompts related to your real stories that we can share as a group. Any other questions that I can answer on delegation or prioritization? So I'm going to put, let's see, Emily, I'm looking for ways to develop leadership skills without being in a titled leadership position. I have to be creative and find ways to do this. Absolutely. So again, people always think like leaders are the ones with the titles. So I just totally scrapped that idea. But I will say that when you have a title, that there's this like, assumed power, and then you get more opportunities, right? You're on these email listservs because you have the supervisor title, and you're excluded for those if you're not on it. So I think some things that you could do, Emily, is if you would search for materials on leading with influence, I think that would be really helpful for you. So leading with influence would be leading without a formal title. And I think thinking about how you show up every day and acting as a leader based on your leadership presence. So you could also search for things like executive presence, basically a term that can help you learn more about how to be present in meetings to basically act like a leader. So dress for the job that you want, right? So not literally, but ways that you can act that's going to help you assert more like a leader. Another podcast I'll put in the leadership notes is Coaching for Leaders. It's by Dave Stachowiak. He has an episode, it's in the late 400s or early 500s, I think, called it's about leading with influence, and it's around executive leadership. And I can actually make a note of that and send that out in the email post this live. Leading through influence, coaching for leaders. Yep, act as if. Yep, exactly. And leading with influence too has a lot to do with trust, right? So cultivating trust with your peer group and then therefore with your boss. So if you can get people to get on board with your ideas because they trust you, you have so much power and you don't need a formal title. So you do that through building trust, and you can build trust through being consistent, walking the walk, talking the talk, following through, all things that I know you're really good at, Emily, because you're very consistent. Um, and also volunteering for some of those opportunities. Another good way that you can do this is through managing up. That kind of sounds weird too, but thinking about your boss. So I know, as for me as a leader, like I said, I've got a lot going on, and it's one thing to delegate to people and try to say, hey, let me help develop you, let me give you some things. But it's also really nice when people come to me and say, hey, I'm really interested in developing XYZ skill. Can you look for opportunities for me? When people come to me to ask for more, that's how I know, like, oh, they're serious about this. Like, they are interested. And that's going to position you well for them to think of you next time instead of you having to go to them. So that might be something that you can also do, Emily, is like go to your leaders or go to people you trust and say, hey, how can I help you? How can I best serve you? How can I support you? Um, and even asking you, hey, what's the biggest pain point you have right now that I can help you with? Because I'm interested in learning those skills and helping, or I can see that you have a lot right now. What's something that I can learn quickly and take off your plate? So yeah, Coaching for Leaders is a really good podcast. And that podcast, Dave always lists other podcast episodes that are related to the topic in the show notes and at the end of his podcast. And he always has basically the guests he has on there are people who have written a lot of books in leadership. And that's how I just like spend a lot of money on Amazon reading leadership books. um, the biggest thing is like, yeah, having read all the books that I order, you can see most of these I've read. There's a few pending. I have Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. So that's like my next big read that I need to read. If somebody else has read that, I need to know. Um, so any other questions? So maybe I will, what I will do is I will send out an email following this with the link to the recording. I believe this will just automatically upload to YouTube so you can watch it again. I will email that out to you with some additional resources that we talked about today, and as well as a link to checking out my 8-week mastermind, which starts on April 12th. And I forgot to mention, right now I have it on sale for $50 off. So I'll have that there for the next day or so. So if you're just want as a reward for showing up to the recording and checking it out, I would love to have you. So I wanted to recognize folks by putting it on sale for a day, but it won't last long. Trust and responsiveness are important character style to gain a very attractive and engaged team and colleagues. Absolutely, absolutely. Trust is huge. What I've been finding a lot lately is, especially in healthcare where I work right now, is that if you don't have trust, things won't move forward, or they'll move very, very, very slowly. And that hurts a lot. It's very hard to gain momentum when you don't have trust. Responsiveness. Yes, I think one area that I'll be vulnerable in and share is like email. Like I get so many, and I, try to be responsiveness. But I think if you can be responsiveness in your character, follow up with people, do what you say you're going to do. Lately I've just been picking up the phone. Like, I saw your email. It's too much to reply. Let me just call you. That's not very millennial of me, but it's working for a lot of folks. Paula, what industry do you work in? If you don't mind me asking, I would love to know, and where you're from. So I will send an email with the resources and the link, and then a reminder about the discounted price if you want to join my mastermind. And I would love to go through the laws. Otherwise, it's a great book, and I really liked today in talking and speaking on the law of priorities. All right, I'm gonna give one more minute here, just in case another thing comes through. But I so appreciate everybody's time today and joining me for this new way. I think I'll be doing more webinars like this. I'm excited to just like be on live with you, to have you ask me real questions and engage with me and chat. So thank you so much, Emily. Thank you, Miss Paula. Thank you to whoever else has joined. Logistic management training. I'm in Hollywood, Maryland. That's amazing. Very cool. I don't know much about logistics management. I'm guessing it's maybe different than project management, but very workflow oriented. So I'd love to hear more from you on that. Like the format on YouTube. Awesome. And let me just leave my email address for you all. It's on my website, but I'm at Kayla at kfaconsulting.org. I'll send you guys the email. Feel free to reply to it. You can. I should get the message. If you don't hear from me, though, then you can check it out. My husband. Thanks for joining, Dr. Goldie Gopher. Love you. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. See how I end this stream.